Well, we welcome you, and especially if you have recently experienced the loss. I know Pastor Jonathan is wanting to send this out to be of help to you as you plan a service amidst dealing with all those adjustments and the grief because of your loss. I'll never forget this woman who, right in this building, made an appointment to see me. She'd been given a very short amount of time to live. I didn't know her. She was someone that was out there in the congregation, not very involved, but she made an appointment to come to see me, and she said, I want you to do my funeral, and I want to plan it right now. And she'd been to the funeral home. She'd made all of the arrangements. I'll never forget it because it was a very small group of her family, but they didn't have to deal with a whole lot of stress at a very emotional time in their life because their mom had foreseen to do this for them. And so I just want to say to you today, God bless you for caring enough about others to do this for them. And whether you call it a funeral or celebration of life or memorial service, it basically has two purposes as I see it. For a believer, we want to comfort those who mourn. How many know nobody can comfort like the Holy Spirit? It comes into those moments where you just think you can't take another moment of grief and another wave hits you and he says, peace be still. Been there? Like only he can do it. So we want the service to comfort those who mourn. Secondly, to communicate the gospel, that Jesus loves us so much that he came to earth to forgive us, and that this life isn't all there is. There's an eternal life because of him. And so we want to do those two things. I'll never forget the first funeral that I ever had. Right here in Toronto, I was assistant pastor while I was going to university in Hamilton. And these people were new Christians in the church, Highway Church in Scarborough. And he was a policeman, and he'd lost his wife suddenly, tragically. And it had all been set up with the church, the traditional church that they had gone to. I went to the funeral just to support the family. I wasn't involved. But the priest showed up drunk. And partway through, the husband who just lost his wife came back to me, and he was just so angry. He said, I want you to get up there and take this service. And I'm 21 years old. I'd never done a funeral before. And I said, I'll tell you what, I think the Holy Spirit helped me right in that moment. I said, I'll lead the graveside service. Let's just let this go, and I'll lead the graveside service. But at the graveside service, I was able to comfort those who mourned. Say, that not every church leader is like this. Eyes on Jesus, and look what he did for us so that when we face death, we know we have eternal life. So I was able to comfort those who mourn and also communicate the gospel. But if you have those as your objectives, you're going to understand a lot what we're going to cover today, because there's two uniquenesses to an end-of-life gathering. One is, especially if it's an unexpected death, such a short preparation time. So usually it's just days, even if you have people traveling in from another country and you delay it till they can get here. And just so you know, not everyone can get here. Don't think you're going to plan it and hold off until everything just becomes the way you would idealistically prefer it to be. Not going to happen. So just go with the best that you can do in that situation. But there's a short preparation, and then the emotional dynamics. People are in states of sometimes anger, but I find usually it's shock and denial. Because just days after this has happened, and listen, family conflicts can easily arise because people maybe who weren't on the same page with each other before, because it's such an emotional hotbed time, it just stuff comes to the surface that wouldn't otherwise be there. Ask me how I know. All right, so those are uniquenesses. Now, there's two audiences that this session is for. Those of you that are thinking ahead to your own gathering, You're like that lady that came to see me. You're just thinking ahead, and you care enough about other people that you're wanting to, however difficult it is to just sort of even cover this kind of thing, you're here because you want to help out that way. And then others, it'll be those who are planning a gathering for someone else, including those of you who are watching this edited video to help you plan a gathering for someone that you love. All right, now I need to make some waivers, right? That's what everybody does. You got to do waivers, right? Have you noticed that? Now, what you do, everybody's got to say, well, no, on these, read the fine print and all that. It's in bold print here. But listen, be flexible. Be flexible. A lot can change between now and you go to be home with the Lord. Changes can take place. So be very careful you're not too rigid. We're going to give you a planning sheet at the end, but just update it from time to time. It's like this fellow that his wife died. He went to live with his family, and he was deaf. Unknown to the family, he had gone out and got hearing aids. He was suddenly able to hear. And when he was at a follow-up visit with the hearing specialist, he said, well, what does your family think of you being able to converse with them and that, And he says, oh, no, I haven't told them yet. He said, I just sit there and listen. He said, I changed my will 3 times. All right, so here's the other waiver. What we're not going to cover here is the whole legal, power of attorney, wills. Listen, these are important. You can go online and find the responsibilities for power of attorney. You get a planning checklist from many good Canadian organizations. And a will, do you know half of Canadians don't have a will? And you heard that one, right? Where there's a will, there's? No. Where there's a will, there's relatives. Okay, so very important to have a will in place, all right? Now, there's some resources that have been made available, and this whole session is going to be available to you. We're going to be able to send it out, and some links of resources from some good people that heard we were doing this, and you're going to be able to see that they'll cover a lot of things that I won't be covering today. Now, why am I giving you such detailed notes? Because this is not the kind of thing, it's not like the teaching that we had this morning that you're going to say, well, I can live that this week. Hopefully this is only one or a few times in your entire life you're going to be planning someone's funeral, right? So if I write it all out for you, then you just put it away and you can pull it out when that tough time comes. All right? Sound like a good plan? All right. Let's talk about the role of the funeral home. I would say this, just as a general guideline, let the funeral home care for as many logistics as possible. They are so resourceful. This is what they do. They can help you with the bulletin, the obituary. They have a website option for tributes these days. It's just really good. When it comes to location, I encourage people to go for a smaller, more intimate venue, especially for an older person. My mom, she's 92. She says, Keith, the older I get, the less people I'll ever have at my funeral because all my friends have died. And so, to have, just a few people, for instance, in this one church's large auditorium, it just doesn't provide that nice, intimate service that you really want to have for your loved one. So keep that in mind. The date for the funeral gathering, prioritize family. Make sure the pastor you're looking to is available, the main participants. But like I said earlier, not everyone is going to be able to be there, okay? So relax with that and just do your best with that part of it. The bulletin, listen, Voice of experience doing many of these gatherings, put as many announcements in the bulletin as possible. Make maximum use of it for any reception time or location details, address of the graveside gathering. Again, these are people that are attending who they don't know they're not memorizing all the times and the addresses, right? And so if you have it in print for them, very, very helpful. And instructions regarding donations to charities. Some people come to you and say, you know, I'd like to make a donation in remembrance of your parent or whatever, and where can I give? So you think that through. Obituary, who's the best to write it? You know, you want someone that's good at that can gather details from others. Pallbearers, the funeral home will likely ask you if you're having pallbearers, and we'll get into casket or cremation in a few moments, but if you have pallbearers, make sure that you know this. If you're asking, if my mom's 92 and she asked pallbearers to be her peers, caskets are heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't even think of that. They just think of and you say, well, what do we do then? We've got these nieces and nephews or whatever. They can be the pallbearers, but what do we do with these people that we really want to honor? They should, well then, do you see? Put them in as honorary pallbearers. And what's their role in case of cremation? You can still put them in the bulletin as pallbearers. It gives you a chance to honor these people, even if they're not carrying a casket, okay? Ask regarding donations. You know, think that through ahead of time. I find people usually grasp at the last charitable, institution that helped them out, instead of thinking through what did this person give to in their life, you know? Was it global outreach and missions or whatever? You know, so think about the person's life, not just, oh, these people helped it, or choose two, you know, Cancer Society and a church charity kind of a thing that was precious to the person. So think that through ahead of time. The casket, you're going to be asked this, do you want an open casket or closed casket? It's totally subjective. It's totally up to you and the family. But if you have a closed casket, what about putting a picture on it, you know, just so that people, when they come to visit, whatever, they can remember that person. All right, we're going to get into a touchy area, tributes. Tributes to me have been the most meaningful part of a service. They also are my worst memories of a service. They sometimes, I'm sure people go away thinking about what someone said, about how they were impacted by that person's life in a tribute, more than even the message that I give many times. That's how powerful tributes can be. But they are also, you know, my hands are sweating right now just thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? So be careful. Listen, here's some considerations. The participants are usually not accustomed to public speaking. Keep that in mind. Their emotions can involve grief and nervousness. You know, they can be in such a state of grief, they need to be ministered to, especially if it's something tragic and they were very close to this person. So be careful there. Children and grandchildren are good choices, but they may not be ready or comfortable with this role. And you can give them a scripture reading. You can give them a role as pallbearers, something else meaningful in that service where they're not feeling, you know, I'm not used to public speaking. You know, they still call public speaking the number one fear that people have. And then if they're also dealing with grief, you know, so just be thinking of these things. And then choose who would represent the person well. You might want to underline this. Don't choose everyone who, quote, wants to say a few words. First of all, they may not even then, they want to. Do you want them to? Is it going to be a few words? Usually if they volunteer themselves, it's not going to be a few words. You need to be in control. You need to represent that person well. I want to give you permission. I want to help you be a gatekeeper there. That just not everyone who wants, because you're already hurting and grieving, and then this person says these things, and it's so easy just to open it up. And now here are guidelines that. Let me give you some alternatives too. People can give tributes on the funeral home website. You know, And if planned, if you have a fellowship time or a family gathering, you can open it up for people to say a few words there. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes the people who are most comfortable public speaking and push you are not the very best ones. They didn't know that person the best. They're not representing that person. So I just want to help you out there and give you permission to think that through ahead of time. There are other alternatives that they can have if they want to say a few words. Provide clear guidelines for tribute makers. And some of you have been through it with me, and I explained to you why. Because of the reasons we just mentioned. We want this service to honor this person. We don't want to get out of proportion where one tribute takes up half the time of the entire service. So I've learned to just ask people to write it down, and you give them a time. You give them a time. Some people, they don't know how to start and they don't know how to finish. You know what I mean? They get up there and then I remember one here, they went on and on and on, and they were not representing the person well. They were just ventilating or something, and people thought they were finished and they started to clap. Well, they just took that as, oh, good, let's go for more. And they just got a second wind and went on with, anyway. Am I being too honest? Okay. I'm trying to help you. I want you and those you plan for to have a good service. So written and timed length, I'm very adamant about that. People write it down, because if you get nervous, you've got your notes there. Even if you don't, you've memorized them, fine, but you have them as backup. If they get grieved and they start to weep, I've come up alongside people giving a tribute and put my arm around them and just help them finish. You know what I'm saying? It's a tough time for people, so write it down, time the length. And then don't forget about video tributes. Let's say you have someone, man, I would really like them to give a tribute, but they can't be there. Video tribute. Wonderful solution for that. And it can help you with the quality control and the length, and it, of course, can be mixed with pictures. Video tributes have a very special place many times. All right, let's talk about music and vocalists. Have a short list of the favorite songs for when you meet with your officiating pastor. Be ready to choose, I'm saying a couple for this service, with others to be played before or after the gathering. Let's say on your planning sheet today, you leave 20 hymns. We're probably not going to sing all of them, okay? Just so you know. But what about having them played before and after the service? Because they were favorite, they were meaningful to you. And I remember Pastor Charles Yates, remember him, some of you? He had a hymn that he wanted, but he also had told me verbally, he said, because they'd gone through a really tough time since the passing of his wife, and he said, that song that you sing around here, Faithful One, so unchanging, ageless one, you're my rock in times of trouble. So we sang that one, you see? But I was able to say why, and I think I get into that here. Work with the pastor to place songs. It's not about just singing a couple of songs in there. You want to place them. You want to, songs can set up what's next or seal what has just happened, So you want to work with the pastor who's officiating to find the right place for songs. And then think of the people who will be attending. Some people, they just sing these songs that no one who's attending knows, and maybe the words are in the bulletin or up on the screen, but they just feel awkward, We who officiate can sort of relieve the valve there by just saying, you may not know these words, you may want to just listen. But these words were special to so-and-so. You know what I'm saying? We can set it up that way, but just be thinking of that. Where did I do one just recently? And I said, what about that song, Amazing Grace? Just the grace of God, and everyone will know it. It'll remind them, or not everyone, but a lot of people will know it. It'll remind them maybe of the grace of God that they've tasted in their past, and it'll give me a chance to sort of speak about that a little bit. All right, and then arrange musical accompaniment. There's always an honorarium involved. If you're involving, if it's someone in the family, that's different. But if you're bringing someone in from the church, you want to appropriately honor them with an honorarium. The church would have, if you have a sound person or technical, You want to make sure you budget that in and make sure you're thinking of them. So be mindful of all of that. All right, here's some options. I've done a lot of funerals in recent years where they were live streamed because the funeral home was set up to do that. Or they at least recorded it and you could send it to a copy of family members who live in a different time zone and they can feel part of that service. Now, notice I say with competent staff. Oh, listen, if you put them in the service, try and put them in before the service or after kind of a thing, or near the end kind of a thing, because what can happen if there's a technical failure? How many have ever been in one of those meetings where and the pastor sets up this video just perfectly, and then there's this delay? And then it becomes a question of, because people, so make sure that they're ready to do it. Not just, Uncle Harry, he runs a CD thing, so he can do it, Just make sure you've got someone there that knows how to just make sure, just like as if they were singing, they'd prepare it, right? They'd prepare that song. You want to prepare what they do even technically as a ministry to those that are there. Just an idea for you, another option is a pastor meeting with the family just before the gathering. I find that especially in the church family. Somebody's just nice just to meet just before and just get that, okay, here we are going into the gathering. We've met all these people, and I just love to help people just reset, get their perspective back before we go into the service. The gathering. All right, then there's a sample order of service. Now, pre-gathering is a great time for remember those hymns that you're not going to sing in the service, or songs? Pictures, videos, great time for them. That is so meaningful for people to come in, rather than just sitting there, being able to remember that person's life. And then there's a welcome, scripture. You can have, sometimes you have, more than one person you'd like to have be involved. And so sometimes you ask them to do the scripture and the prayer, and then your pastor that you have involved doing the message later on. But the welcome, the scripture, having a prayer, Lord be with us in this gathering today, that kind of prayer. The tributes, and then music, it just sort of helps, again, just affirm what's been said and set up the pastoral message. And then a prayer that's mainly for those turning to Jesus and family that's grieving. If you're not having a committal, if it's the middle of January and the committal service is in the springtime when the ground's not frozen, whatever, in those instances, sometimes we'll do a committal right there. You do the committal at that moment. And then a benediction. And then there's nice to have post-gathering music. And then, of course, the funeral home is so helpful here. And they will have met with the pastor ahead of time, and you'll determine how you're going to just leave. Usually the pastor walks out and waits for the pallbearers to come out. They're given instructions by the funeral director, and then you walk out to the hearse at the back of the building, or depending on what the next step is going to be. And so that just gives you a sample service. You may flex things around a bit, but sometimes, and like I say, if you have grandchildren or children, depending on, or nieces, nephews, sometimes you can have, there's 2 2-minute tributes there, then there's music, and then there's 2 more 2-minute tributes there. You know what I'm saying? So you just sort of can just be flexible with this order of service. And then the graveside, usually the pastoral welcome, there's the scripture, a prayer benediction. It's a brief gathering. Some options there to place, just so you're aware of it ahead of time. Maybe you've been there, but sometimes the funeral director will give you the opportunity to take a flower and place it on the person's casket, if it's a casket graveside. And let me say this too, because I've noticed this recently. they bring in these machines, and it's lost a lot of that personal touch. So find out from your funeral director ahead of time what the graveside staff, they're very unionized. They're very, if you've ever planned it before, sometimes you're stuck with a time of the service that's not your preference, just simply because they're going to close at a certain time. They're not as flexible as other people in this whole area of work are. And so be mindful of that. And, often what I'll do, I'll try and set it up with the family and those that attend. Usually it's a very small group, just the close friends and family that are there at the graveside. Set it up with them that let's leave. Let's leave as we want to remember this person, and don't stay to all these machines. That's just, I guess, a preference of mine, but I'd rather people go away remembering the scriptures that this person is now with the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Rather than, is that a John Deere or a Kubota? It's unsettling, and it's not the very best ending for that kind of time. I'll just put it out there for you. Any letters of complaint, by the way, go to the lead pastor, Jonathan Smith. You'll find his name on the website. Now that I'm a teaching pastor, I can say these things. All right. Yeah, and sometimes if you have a song at the gravesite, make sure people know the song or you provide the words. And think of the people that remember we said the two big objectives are to comfort those who mourn, but also to represent Jesus well, the gospel. So don't make people feel like outsiders. Help them feel like they want to know this Jesus. Do you know what I'm saying? So don't go singing a bunch of songs where they just feel, well, good for you, but I don't know what you're talking about. So bring people in. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring people into knowing how loving and forgiving and eternal lifing Jesus is, okay? Invented a new word. All right, a few observations I've noticed. Trends, casket or cremation. Some of you have such strong traditions and memories, and all of the people that you've loved were buried a certain way, and it just feels, it's more of an emotional thing to think of, someone being cremated. But don't forget this, like people who died at sea or in a fire, Scripture nowhere forbids cremation, nor does it say this is how a person should be buried. The body is perishable, Paul says, but it will be raised imperishable. And we're going to have a glorified body. So don't put yourself under a guilt trip there or judge someone else because they have views that are different than yours. Okay, enough said? Okay, you want me to move on, do you? Okay. The trend, more casual, and I think not everyone owns a suit. And I've literally had people not feel comfortable coming to a funeral because they didn't feel they could dress up for it. You know what I mean? So be very careful there that you want, remember your purposes, to comfort those who mourn and to reach people with the gospel, right? So people will dress respectfully, but sometimes the best they have is just, their shirt and their pants that they wear. And so you want them to be there as well. So that's a trend. Here's one site versus travel. It was a relative in our family. I did one for a funeral for about a month ago. And they wanted to go to the funeral home for the service, have a reception at such and such a place because, they were set up to do those sorts of things. And then we'd all go to the graveside and then meet back at the home. And then I said, can I just offer some input here? And I said, if you want people to be visiting with each other, comforting each other, and really have a time where the focus is on remembering the person we're remembering, how about trying to have it all in one facility, or at least travel as possible, okay? Toronto's a big city, and traveling, anyone been on the 401 recently? So be very careful. Try to do that as much as you can to have the least amount of travel. And another trend I notice, many will attend the visitation, but not the funeral service. Many reasons why. Work. They're working when you're having the funeral service, or they're taking care of children. Or one, if they have children, one will come to visitation, the other to the funeral, you know. So be mindful. And you know what? The visitation can be such a wonderful ministry time. It really can. You know what I'm talking about, visitation? The night, the evening before or earlier in the morning when the funeral's that day. People interact with each other a lot more than they will in the funeral service. So it's a great time. And it's also a great time to maybe have some pictures that are there of the person. Sometimes I've done the funeral of someone, I pastored them for who knows how many decades, and I go to their funeral, I learn lots about them that I didn't even know because of the pictures and the different memory things that were there, the video that was running, and so be mindful of that as well. Yeah, the older you are, the smaller the attendance. Cap your I just want to save you from being disappointed. If you're having a funeral for someone, your parent may have had, or grandparent may have had many, many friends and people in the workplace that love them and all, but they have all since died. They're not going to be there. So be careful that you don't expect this big venue to be filled with people. Not near as many as, on the other side, if someone's young, it's amazing how many people will be there at the gathering so many times. So be mindful of that, just to help you with your planning. And I would say prioritize the next generation. Always be thinking of the impact that this is going to have on others. Let the person's personality and faith shine through. Listen, if you're the one doing the tribute, don't talk all about yourself. Yes, include those personal stories of your own interaction with that person, but honor that person. Honor that person. Speak of them from your own lens, of course, but speak of them. And another thing, let key people, even coming out today, let key people know your thoughts about what we've covered here today. Some of you, you're at appropriate stage or situation where you could go over some of these things with people. Because your next sheet, do you see it there? It's sort of Pastor Jonathan wanted you to go away from here and having a place to just write down some of your thoughts about what you would like to have in your celebration of life service. And so I say put down the date, and then when you want to change it, you can just... But what are some of your favorite scriptures and songs, your favorite charities? That way you're not leaving loved ones just guessing or wondering. Some favorite life events and memories. Maybe some arrangement that you've made. Maybe some other things that you'd also want to write down there. I have in here, I just thought of it this morning. I have in here, I call it Grandpa's Bible. It's my grandfather's Bible, and it's getting so full in here now with all kinds of bulletins from funerals, but I keep in here bulletins and just mementos from those kind of celebration life services I've done, and it's just so meaningful. And I think Pastor Jonathan and Jessica talked about this morning, you're your own worst critic, right? You don't think you're making an impact on people's lives, but it's those quiet things you did behind the scenes that made a difference in the life of someone that they will always remember. And so some of the people that I have bulletins of, you'd know them, Charles Yates, and we mentioned earlier, but Elsie Laidley, some of you know her. Cheryl Shan, this guy was quite a character. He went to be with the Lord, long-time members, and he was an elder here. But look at how the kids just personalized that bulletin and had pictures in it. It helped that one of them worked in graphic design. You know what I'm saying? Irving Chung. I just pull these out and I just look at these every once in a while. Some of you wouldn't even know this guy, Sewell Webster. He's a usher here for years, just one of those people that was such a privilege to pastor. Quiet behind the scenes. No one hardly even knew them, but they're precious. Precious, founding pastor of this church. Such a privilege to do Reverend Bob Mercer's, if I've got all kinds of them in there, but I'm just saying your life is making and will make an impact. There's a verse in the Bible that says this, listen, though dead, they still speak. Yeah. Okay, listen, good to be with you. May the Lord just bless you. And, sometimes when it comes to someone who you've known for years, have you noticed it's how they leave is how you remember them? So give some thought to this, and may the Lord guide you and bless you, and I hope this has helped today.